Former President Donald Trump is narrowly favored over President Biden with a 5-point edge.
I think voters have decided the cure for inflation is not Biden.
More than half of registered voters say they would trust Donald Trump more with the economy than President Biden.
We've got some new polling in on the 2024 presidential election, and it's not good news for Joe Biden. It's a bloodbath. In fact, can we say that? Okay, we've got a whole new round of polls right now on where the American people are politically on the 2024 presidential election and who their preference is. And it's not good news for Joe Biden. This is an absolute bloodbath. We'll start with the biggest national poll announced on Fox News. It's a Fox News poll. Brett Baer's special report broke the news yesterday.
We have brand new Fox News polls on the current state of the presidential election in a hypothetical 5-way ballot test, which includes Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Cornel West, and Jill Stein, all candidates. Former President Donald Trump is narrowly favored over President Biden with a 5-point edge. That 5-point difference also carries over to our head-to-head matchup, man-to-man. And on their favorable ratings, independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. tops Trump and Biden with 47%, 45%, and 39% respectively.
All right. Now, a couple of things that are noteworthy here. And yes, if you've been watching this show for the last several months, you know that I try not to fixate too much on national polls because you're smart enough to know that that's not how we elect a president in this country. We elect a president state by state. Now, stay with us because we've got state by state polling as well. And the bloodbath continues, especially in the most important battleground states. We'll share that with you in just a moment. But I do want to highlight a couple of things that are incredibly important here in this national poll from Fox News. The first item number is here. Yes, this so-called 5-way race. You see that Trump leads 43-38 over Biden. I don't know why they do it this way. It's what, alphabetical? Why? If Trump's in the lead, he should be on the top line. Come on, guys. But he leads. But here's the important criteria here to point out. Trump leads Biden by 5 points in this 5-way race, right? But then when you look at the head-to-head race, he still leads by 5 points. What does that tell you? That yes, some people, some voters are leaving Trump to go vote for Joe Biden, or excuse me, for one of the other 3 candidates other than Joe Biden, but just as many people are leaving Biden as well. So in other words, it's kind of a wash right now. The fact that he maintains a 5-point lead, whether it's a crowded field or whether it's just head-to-head, is huge. But the biggest number that you're looking at right now is not just the 5-point lead that Trump has over Biden in this Fox News poll. It's the fact that he has hit the magic 50% number. This early on, when you've got a 50% mark in the national polling, it's gigantic. Why? Well, do the math. You're missing 5% of the electorate in this poll, right? Understand the people who were polled were given 3 choices. Do you want Trump? Do you want Biden? Or are you undecided? Now, let me tell you something. I don't quite understand any human being that votes in the United States of America right now who is undecided. After all, it's exactly the choice you had 4 years ago, right? Gee, I don't know. I haven't really made up my mind about those two. You just voted 4 years ago for the exact same choice. Although there is a difference because you see, at least 4 years ago, you could say, well, let's give Biden a shot. You never know. It can't be that bad. But now you know how bad it is. You know very well how bad it is. So with 5% undecided, without the undecideds, he's already at 50%. Republican gets 50% nationwide. That's an electoral bloodbath because Republicans have not won 50% or more of the vote, the national vote in America since 2004 with George W. Bush. And in 2000, he didn't do it either. Before that, you have to go all the way back to George Bush's dad in 1988 when a Republican won 50% or more. Do you hear what I'm saying? Since 1988, with George Herbert Walker Bush, a Republican in a presidential election has won 50% or more in the national vote only once. George W. Bush in 2004. And right now, Donald Trump is sitting at that mark. Now, listen, I know there's a lot of game to be played. But if you look at this number and you really analyze it like I have, you recognize the reality that Joe Biden isn't going to get all of the 5% undecided if the election were today. In fact, I would venture to guess that over half of the undecideds right now have decided. But they don't tell some stranger on the phone that they're going to vote for Donald Trump. And I think we all know why. But the news gets even worse for Joe Biden as you break down what the priorities are on policies right now and which candidate has the better solutions. CNBC broke that down specifically on their survey on the economy.
Now let's look at who voters think have the best policies on these issues. Let's go. Overall economy, the fourth most important issue. Donald Trump has a 30-point lead on that. Crime tied for fourth, 28-point lead for Trump. Inflation, the most important issue, 27-point for Donald Trump. Healthcare, Biden has a 19-point advantage on that. And the middle class, that's a place, as Wolf was talking about, where there is some battle right there. Who has the best policies for the middle class? Let's go to the second tier of issues, which aren't all that far down, but they're not in the top five. Immigration, 48-point lead for Donald Trump. Taxes, 32.
I need to pause here just for a second, and we will finish, but you can see the numbers and the data here. The second tier thing, I don't know the point or how they rate these numbers at the CNBC poll, but most polls I look at right now, when you ask the American people what is the single most important issue to you, it is immigration. It is border security. And you can see the advantage Trump has here by 48 points. I'm guessing since they're calling this the All-America Economic Survey, that they were asking these questions as it relates to the economy. And that's what puts immigration down in the second tier. But make no mistake, for almost every poll I've looked at, when you just ask the American people blindly, what's your most important issue in this country? It's immigration and border security. And that by 48 points, Trump is winning. That's game over. All right.
2 for Trump, China, 28 for Trump. Come to abortion, a 25-point lead for President Biden. And Social Security, another potential battleground area. Now
it's not really a battleground area because I'll be honest with you, neither candidate is going to do anything about Social Security, or at least promise to do anything about Social Security in this election cycle. Biden will scare you and make people terrified that Republicans are going to take away your Social Security. They're not going to do anything about it. CNBC continues here on the breakdown of the economic policies of this election.
I think voters have decided the cure for inflation is not Biden.
Yeah,
I think that's one part of it. And then maybe there's a sense that Trump might spend less. He's seen also in other data we have better on the federal deficit, better on taxes. So that might also be seen as the reason why Trump is seen as better. I think Biden erred terribly with this Inflation Reduction Act, we're calling it, which was really a spending act.
Can we just point out, I mean, it's easy to find the insidious, over-the-top, in-your-face media bias that you get from MSNBC and Joy Reid and Chuck Todd and George Stephanopoulos. And I mean, please, we could literally do a show every day on their media bias. It's the barely visible media bias, the subliminal media bias that you get from these places that actually drives me up the wall. When I see it, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. You see it, right? Look at the Chiron. You just heard the polling data. This might be the worst week in Joe Biden's political career, certainly as president, with regard to polling numbers that have come out. We've got more to share with you, but look at what the Chiron says from CNBC. Look at that Chiron. And I know what they're describing there. Biden gets a modest bump. That's the Chiron. So you know how this is effective? If you're not actually watching the television, if it's playing along with 8 other televisions in a bar or restaurant in New York while you're having a beer with your buds, or if it's just on in the background at somebody's house and the volume is down and you're just looking, that's the message you get. That's your headline. You have no idea what they're actually talking about, but you get this. Biden gets a modest bump. Oh, Biden's having a good day. No, he's not. The modest bump is that he's not as horribly unpopular as he was the last week when they took the poll. His unfavorable number is up a teeny bit, probably because he was photographed eating an ice cream cone. But the Chiron in your pals in the media, and don't tell me that CNBC doesn't have a political bias, because they're owned by NBC, they're in New York, they have a very strong media bias. It's just not as blatant and in your face. And frankly, that's the worst kind. Biden gets a modest bump. You should be ashamed of yourself. But you know what? While we're talking about our friends over at MSNBC, let's see how they analyze this for their very sad viewers. It's pretty fun.
Despite President Joe Biden holding rallies across the country in recent weeks to tout the state of the U.S. economy, his message still may not be resonating with many Americans. According to a new Fox News poll, more than half of registered voters say they would trust Donald Trump more with the economy than President Biden, and by something of a significant margin, 56% to 41%.
By the way, this isn't even one of the, they always tell you, well, our primetime shows are the opinion shows, but during the day, we're just straight news. There's literally only one cable network that adheres to that, and it's Fox News. I've been over there a lot. I've done a lot of appearances. There really is it's not a firewall, but there's a huge separation in their newsroom from the people who report the news versus the people who work on the primetime opinion shows. Listen to how this person represents. We're going to watch it again just so we can break down the delivery of this news to the very sad MSNBC viewers.
Despite President Joe Biden holding rallies across the country in recent weeks to tout the state of the U.S. economy, In other words, despite the fact that everything's wonderful in the economy right now, and it's so great that Joe Biden's going all over the country to tell everyone about how great it is, because it's great for us over here. Isn't it great for you? Of course, I think we all agree. The economy is great. And despite the fact that Joe Biden is doing such a great job, his message still may not be resonating with many Americans. Americans are too stupid to get the message. I mean, what more do you want from this guy? And God knows we here at MSNBC are doing whatever we can to lie to deliver the message of the great economic prosperity we're all feeling. But the Americans, they're stupid. They don't live in Manhattan like you and I do. So they're just Neanderthals. They don't get it. They're so stupid. Guess what they're thinking of doing? Guess who they like better? According to a new Fox News poll, more than half of registered voters say they would trust Donald Trump more with the economy than President Biden. Did you hear that delivery? Donald Trump. Shockingly, according to a new poll, over half of Americans would trust Donald Trump with the economy. I mean, does anyone forget what the economy was like under Donald Trump? I mean, it was pretty good, wasn't it? Yeah, it was really good, actually. This is how clueless in their biased bubble these guys are. He literally, he lives in Manhattan. He comes down his elevator. He goes to his waiting car. He gets driven to the studio. He leaves his waiting car, hits the sidewalk for maybe, 12 seconds, and then he goes right into 30 Rock, goes up the elevator into the studio. He's constantly surrounded by people who all agree with him and believe in him, and he can't for the life of him understand what you idiots in Oklahoma are thinking. And it just permeates from his delivery. Oh, it's wonderful to see. Speaking of New York, two contrasting headlines about today's events in New York that sort of tell you exactly how these two presidencies approach their job and how they're being received by the American people right now. USA Today, Biden to bring out the celebrities at high-dollar fundraiser with Obama and Clinton. It's not just a high-dollar fundraiser. It is a record-breaking fundraiser. Joe Biden is dropping everything in Washington, D.C. because, he's got such a busy schedule. He's going to do a fundraiser in New York at Radio City Music Hall with Lizzo. And it's going to be a celebrity elite fan fest with Barack Obama and, yes, Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton. A week after in New York, everyone was doing victory laps and clutching their pearls at this outrageous so-called sexual abuse judgment where Donald Trump has to fork over tens of millions of dollars because of the horrible experience that E. Jean Carroll had back in the 90s that she literally can't remember. And while at the same time they're decrying him, they're going to stand on stage with Bill Clinton. Remind me what Bill Clinton was doing with women back in the 90s? So Joe Biden's going to be in New York for that. Coincidentally, Donald Trump today will also be in New York. It will not be at a fundraiser at Radio City Music Hall with Lizzo and Bill Clinton. Donald Trump will be attending the post-funeral wake
of a 31-year-old police officer who was murdered in the line of duty by a criminal who had 21 prior convictions but was let out on the street yet again. Last year, one of his convictions was for gun crimes. It was a gun crime. You know, he violated one of those common sense gun safety laws that Democrats are always talking about, that Republicans oppose. We need more of those laws on the book, so when people violate them, we can put them back on the street, and a year later, they're going to murder a cop. The family of this police officer in New York invited Donald Trump to the wake today, and he'll be there for that. Donald Trump in New York for the wake of a police officer. Joe Biden will be there. He'll be raising money with Barack, Bill, and Lizzo. I promised you state by state polls, and I'm going to give you that now. Real Clear Politics averages. You know, whoever's in the lead there, they color the print either red or blue, right? And that looks pretty damn red, doesn't it? And I mean Republican red, conservative red, not commie pinko red. These are the RCP average of polls. So you'll see head-to-head on an average of poll basis, Trump has a 1.7 point lead. Five-way average, he's got a 2.3 lead. In the battlegrounds across the board, it's 3.7. And let's break that down state by state, shall we? Wisconsin, Trump 1.2. Arizona, Trump 5.4. Georgia, Trump 5.0. Michigan, Trump 3.7. That's why Biden's throwing Israel under the bus, because he's trying to salvage Michigan because of a largely Palestinian and Muslim community in Dearborn. Pennsylvania, Trump 1 point. North Carolina, Trump 5 points. Nevada, Trump 4.3 points. Yeah, my friends, the polls are in right now. I know that it's March. I know that there's a lot to be done. I know that they're probably going to come up with new charges against Donald Trump. But right now, it is a bloodbath. It is a slaughter. It isn't even close. It is a blowout. And this, by the way, despite everything that they have thrown at Trump. All of the criminal charges, all of the civil charges, all of the money, all of the time, all of the media coverage that focuses just on that. And yet, even with that steamroll of a political attack that he's endured for the last year, that is only intensified right now, somehow, unlike Joe Biden, Trump's message is resonating with the American people. Why? Because despite what my friend over at MSNBC said about how Joe Biden just can't cut through the noise and the American people don't really understand the job that Joe Biden's doing, actually, sir, it's quite the opposite. The American people have a full awareness of the job that Joe Biden is doing and has done. And the overwhelming opinion of those Americans is, thank you, we've had enough.